so I won't have to do it a second time like I did on Monday. That was a pain in the butt. Let's go to my channel. Okay, that should be running. Cool, let's mute that. Alright, good. Everything is running. I should have an email here. No? Alright. Oh, there it is. And they're live. Good. Alright. So, once more, as a reminder, now we are literally 1 week out from the first paper. 1 week. 1 month. Sorry. 1 month. 1 month out from the first paper. It is March 5th. So today is February 5th. Actually, yeah, now that we're doing this, it is 4 weeks right here. Because that next week is going to be our spring break. So, yeah, you've got 4 weeks to do a 2 to 3 page paper double spaced. You've got plenty of time. And it's on what we've already gone over. So, yeah, and that's just the default. If you want to do other stuff, you're welcome to. Yeah. So, any questions before we start? Okay. Just adjust these things slightly so I'm not in my own way. Tell you what, the older you get, the more you get in your own way. Alright. So, let's start. I hope y'all have your notes. Alright. Before the end of the Civil War, what region of South Carolina briefly experienced emancipation under Union soldiers? It's too early for this brightness. Right at the start of chapter, what's that, 14? Yes, the Sea Islands. Yeah. And down, on the coast, the islands were technically off the coast. Yeah, there was some brief emancipation before the war was even over, as long as the soldiers were there. Let me get this. All right. After reuniting with their families, education became vitally important. What particular skill was most sought after by the freed slaves? Reading. Reading was the number one thing they were looking for because, that's very important. All right, and also under this section, what is the name of the federal agency formed to aid ex-slaves financially and legally? The Freedmen's Bureau. Okay. And although I know I can spell bureau, gun to my head, I can't spell bureaucratic. That word just, it breaks my brain. Whoa. Oops. Okay. All right. This one's got a lot of stuff in it, so let's do this. Well, yeah. Let's start with. This is the only number you guys will need to know. Which amendment officially abolished slavery in the United States? 13th. 13th Amendment. You will not need to know a year for this test. That's the only number you're going to need to know specifically. There's a couple of like percentages you need to know, but they're all multiple choice and they're like real broad percentages. So yeah, we'll get there in just a second. In fact, we'll get there now. Along with the acceptance of the abolition of slavery, so 13th Amendment, what percentage of the electorate in the South, in the South, needed to swear an oath of allegiance to the United States in order to rejoin the Union, at least under Lincoln's plan? Say that again? 10%, correct. Just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Yes, 10%. That was Lincoln's 10% plan. Unfortunately, Lincoln became indisposed, and Andrew Johnson took over. Bless you. So for Andrew Johnson, what was the real enemy in the South? Yes. The landowners, the rich landowners, the aristocracy, however you want to put it. The Southern elite. That was who he. That's what Johnson saw as the real enemy in the South, because he was raised as a poor rural farmer, and so he hated the rich in the South. And for him, slavery was just a tool that they used rather than something that needed to be gotten rid of for the sake of the slaves. Let's see. Before the newly freed slaves could be made citizens, what was the name for laws passed in the South which restricted their right to vote, bear arms, and intermarry? Black Codes. Jim Crow laws come later. This was basically, it's illegal to be black. Like, the Black Codes were significantly worse than the Jim Crow laws. As bad as the Jim Crow laws were, these were actually significantly worse because they weren't even citizens yet, so they had no legal protection at all. Okay, let's see. This one's always hard to do for study day. How did Johnson respond to the Tenure of Office Act, which made it illegal for him to remove cabinet members without Senate approval? He did it anyway, yeah. One second, yeah. Disregarded the, oops, for goodness sake, Tenure of Office Act. Yeah, the Tenure of Office Act disallowed Johnson from removing cabinet members without Senate approval, and he did it anyway. This is what led to his partial impeachment. All right, one more thing under this section. Who was a general of the Army at the time who Johnson had to go through after the Command of the Army Act, which was passed in 1867? Yes, Ulysses S. Grant. Yeah, this was Grant, because again, remember, Johnson was trying to interfere with the military reconstruction in the South, and he had to go through Grant, who was not going to let him interfere with the military reconstruction in the South. All right. Once Reconstruction got underway properly, there were two groups of whites in control in the South. The first were seen as traitors, who were Republicans in the South that opposed secession. What was another name for them? Scalawags. There was this other group who controlled the South during Reconstruction. They were Northerners who headed south and were seen as coming to plunder resources before returning home. They were the carpetbaggers, yes. Needless to say, not everybody liked any kind of freedom for blacks in America. Who was the man who founded the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan? Yes, Nathan Forrest. Also, we have groups of African Americans who traveled west to escape the political confines of the South. I thought they had a neat name, so I wanted to include them. Do you remember this group? No, they come later. These are basically sharecroppers who decided to head west, usually to like Kansas and stuff, not too far west. Yeah, the Exodusters, because they were having their own little exodus, but also the Midwest was dusty and awful. Okay, that should be it for that section. On to the frontier. What was the most important? Oh wait, nope. I always miss this one. For some reason, I always skip this guy because he's boring, but what happened here is still important. Okay, what was the name of the man whose presidency spelled the end of the Reconstruction due to the closeness of the race and the compromises required to put him in office? This was right at the end of the chapter. Say that again? Hayes, yes. Rutherford B. Hayes. Rutherford Hayes. If I can spell. It's spelled right. Oh yeah, there we go. Hayes. All right. Now on to traveling west. What was the most important investment when it came to westward expansion? It's always railroads. um, however, however, when it came to expansion, there was a lot of money required. Um, where did most of this money come from? Europe. My class yesterday was like, taxes and land grants. I was like, no, 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 no. They came from outside of America. All right. Oh, actually, yeah, that's it for that. I always get ahead of myself here. Native Americans. Um, how well did the Native American tribes get along with one another? Not well. The Native American tribes were typically they were independent of one another. Oftentimes, they had been fighting for generations. I mean, like I had described them, they were as different from one another as any European countries were, um, although not as inbred as the European countries typically. So, yeah, it wasn't just like the American government is fighting the Indians, this one single group. So, yeah, they were all very different. Um, how did they view land ownership? Correct. Land as communal. So nobody really owned the land. It belonged to everybody. All right, and one more thing for this section. More than any other, what animal was vitally important to Native Americans in the West? Buffalo / bison. If I want to be pedantic, but I won't be that pedantic. All right. Now, as far as interactions between the natives and the whites heading west, not great. After the massacre at Sand Creek, Colorado, what U.S. colonel made his famous last stand at the Battle of Little Bighorn? Not Sherman. Different colonel. He's typically seen as some great hero, but Little Bighorn. He's typically seen as a hero, but lately, his actions are better described as he got what was coming to him. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. George Custer. Custer's Last Stand. Which again, the painting that I showed you guys, it was meant to be like, oh, it's heroic, and he's dying like a warrior's death. Eh. Let's see. The name of the act which carved up Native American lands, giving each family excuse me, giving each family head a parcel to use in exchange for giving up their customs and traditions. The Dawes Act. Ironically enough, we're gonna have another Dawes Act, like in World War II, I think. It's a completely different act, but there's another like Dawes in like 70 years that's gonna show up, but it's gonna be in like 2 more tests, so you won't get those 2 mixed up. Yeah, this was the act that carved up Native American lands. It gave each family head a parcel of land in exchange for giving up their customs and culture, essentially. Like it was assimilating the natives as opposed to totally genociding them, but it also took all their land away. Uh, bu- 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 what was the name given by Native Americans to African American soldiers who headed west to fight said Native Americans? Correct. Buffalo Soldiers. And this is one of the ones where like we're not actually sure where it came from. The Native American tribes that used these names like got wiped out, so we don't actually know why they used the name. And finally, what was the event which crushed the remaining resistance the Native Americans had? Wounded Knee. The massacre at Wounded Knee. All right. On to slightly less genocidal stuff. What was the event which sent white pioneers flocking west after 1848, much to the detriment of Native Americans that were already there? The Gold Rush. Yeah, I mean, it was gold. Gold in them their hills. Located in Story County, Nevada. What was the name of the largest silver vein of the period? It was something like $300 million worth of silver in like 1800s dollars, so that's like way more money now. Story County, Nevada, right in the middle of the the whole thing, the whole rush. Largest silver vein of the period. What was it called? Well, not the city, the name of the silver vein. Yeah, apparently they had names. I don't know. Maybe named after the guy that found it. I don't know. I'm not actually sure how that worked. Mm-hmm. Comstock. Comstock load. Load being a mineral deposit. According to the 1875 census for Story County, what percentage of the population was female? Um, no, but this is it's multiple choice, so uh, you don't have to give me like, how do I say it? This is still in Story County where the Comstock load was. This is like one of the larger cities or one of the larger boom towns in the area. Um, what percentage was female? You're close, and it is a very round number. I'm not like 42.5% or something. It's not that low. I've got 0, 25, 50, and 75. No, 50. It was half and half, 50-50. Which, I mean, for most of our perception of like the West, seems pretty high. This is Story County. This is the same place where Comstock Lode was located. So it's like right in the middle of all of this. So it probably didn't represent like everywhere, but it was a good representation of the overall like mining towns. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. What was the most common occupation for said women when they headed west? Prostitution. Whoop. My class yesterday was far less mature about that. They were having a weird time with it. Okay, on to more West stuff. Because I mean, there's plenty to talk about. Some other jobs out west. What was the name of the trail on which cowboys engaged in the 1,500-mile long drive from Texas to Kansas? Well, Oregon is nowhere near Texas and Kansas. There was a certain name for this trail. And also the Oregon Trail was used by like settlers heading west. Hmm? Not really. We just mentioned like people heading west. We never spoke about the Oregon Trail specifically. find it, you get to try to pronounce it. Yeah, Chisholm Trail. That was good. Chisholm. Some people try to really overpronounce it. I mean, it's the West. It just all runs together. Chisholm Trail. What act passed by Lincoln's Congress gave settlers cheap land as long as they cultivated it, which is what really settled the West? Homestead, yeah, the Homestead Act. This is something that, again, my previous class was very much had. They're like, we remember this from, like 2 years ago in high school. It's like, yeah, this is something they actually taught us in high school, was the Homestead Act. That was pretty easy. All right. And let's get to the last section here. What religious group headed west in order to escape the U.S. government's ban on the practice of polygamy? The Mormons. One of the largest groups in the West was that of the Chinese immigrants. What was the name of the act which disallowed further immigration and even restricted Chinese already in America from becoming citizens? No, that's both earlier and later. That's exactly what it was. It was the Chinese Exclusion Act. Speaking of, just to go into some stuff that literally happened over the weekend. So apparently, China has created a cheaper and better AI system that's basically ChatGPT, but China made it so it's cheaper. And well, also apparently our government wants to make it illegal. Like you can go to jail for using it because capitalism. Yeah, because that's how free market works. Free market capitalism, y'all. Anyway, on to the industry, I guess. Let's see. Industry. Right. So the Industrial Revolution began in Britain. What newly formed nation outproduced them, at least until the United States overtook both nations? So it started in Britain, but then there was another nation that came up in Europe that outproduced Britain. Yes, Germany. Germany, just to remind you guys, hasn't existed. It didn't exist until 1880, at least not in its current state, until literally 1880. It was just a bunch of little independent states. So yeah, there's still even today a lot of really independent regional thought within Germany. Let's see. Oh yeah, here we go. Oh, never mind. That's the next one. it's right here in the study guide. What industry was the most important in the so-called Age of Organization in America, which is just what the book calls, the Industrial Revolution? What's the most important industry? Mm-mm. Nope. Nope. Who's that? I heard it. Yes, it's trains again. Everything everybody else said went into trains. Steel was big because we needed steel for trains. Oil was big because we needed oil for trains. Textiles got bigger because trains made the transportation easier. We'll actually talk more about textiles later when we get to another section. Right. Now, granted, when we get to like making steel ships and skyscrapers, still does get bigger and railroads become a lesser thing. But like early on in the Industrial Revolution, it's all trains. So yeah, railroads are number one. And what social construct did railroads create, which was eventually standardized and used all over the world? A social construct being something that doesn't physically exist is something we simply agree upon. This exists because of railroads. And I mentioned it twice. Yes, time zones. Because time zones do not physically exist. There is no line. no actual line. It's just on a map. I mean, technically maps don't exist either. They're just a thing we agree exists. All right. Okay, I guess I'll put this in here. For my other class, I had it down here with business terms, so I guess I'll go ahead and include it here with the New South. What industry grew quickly in the New South thanks to plentiful cotton, cheap labor, and improved transportation? Textiles. What system was instituted in the South, which created cheap labor by hiring out blacks jailed for minor offenses? That was part of this, but it had a different term, like the overall term. Did you hear it, or did you give me an answer? Okay. Yeah, I'll take that. Convict lease system. Yeah, prison labor. Which actually, we very much still have. And a lot of the firefighters in California right now are convicts that are not being paid to go out and almost, if not sometimes, die fighting the fires. All right. On that note, inventors. Who invented the telephone? Alexander Graham Bell. Or I guess I should say, who was the one that got his patent seen first? Because I told you guys the story of how close that came. This one I had to go a bit more detail into because I couldn't just say, hey, who invented this? Who was the inventor who created the invention factory, churning out items like the phonograph, motion picture, and most famously, the light bulb? Edison. That's why I said he had the invention factory, and the factory, which is to say the people working in it, brought these things out. But he put his name on the patents. All right. Business terms, because I wanted to have an even 50 questions. So here's some extra terms that are a little bit nitpicky, and I apologize for that, but, you know, want to go ahead and get it done. So, number of strategies when it came to businesses in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. What was the term for increasing the output of a product while lowering the cost of production? This is very, very early mass production. I said this was like that, but not quite yet. We're not quite there yet. It had a different name. Where they increase the output and lowering the cost, often by paying the workers less. Nope, that's not quite here yet. That's why I said this wasn't quite mass production yet, because we're not quite there yet. Had a different name. It's a strategy as opposed to like a thing happening in the factory. No, that's earlier. That's from last semester. That was Eli Whitney. Which again does like feed into all of this technically, but this is increasing output, having a lot of output and lower cost, so you're making more money. I'm trying to give you hints without giving it away. Using your notes, it's right at the start of I think it's business integration. Industrial consolidation. Yeah. Hmm? No, not quite. It's right at the start of all this crap. It's right at the start of the industrial consolidation. Where they're making more stuff and then paying less in the upfront. I'll admit the name's kind of dumb, but yes. It's called the economy of scale, because they scale up production while scaling down what they're paying for each product, each individual product. Which again, like I said, it eventually becomes like mass production. Okay, how about this is another strategy. When a business tycoon owns everything relating to his product, such as production of raw materials and the means to ship them. No. No, this is the other one is closer to a monopoly. This is just when he owns, like, for example, with Carnegie, joining up with Frick so that he has access to the coal, and then also, like, maybe owning a rail line so he can ship the steel out. This is rather than just he does the steel part, he has everything in the production line. We are almost there. Vertical integration. This is when a business tycoon owns everything relating to his product. So production raw materials that will be used to create his product, and also the shipping to move the product to market. So not just, the steel foundry, but the raw materials used, and then the shipping, and like the whole thing. Lastly, or at least in these three, what's the term for when a business tycoon eliminates his competition by either buying them out or running them out of business? Technically, but they had another term for this specific strategy. This is horizontal integration, which becomes a monopoly, but the strategy to do this is called horizontal. Horizontal. I can't spell. Horizontal. This is when a business tycoon either buys out opposing firms or runs them out of business, which would theoretically create a monopoly. But that leads into the next question, wherein they avoid a monopoly by doing this. What sort of business arrangement did Rockefeller create in order to avoid a monopoly? The trust, which again is a monopoly technically, but also legally kind of not. Where, like, technically there are a bunch of different businesses, but they all work for Rockefeller. Yeah. All right, one more here. What sort of business, thanks to the Supreme Court ruling in 1886, was protected as a person by the system put in place by the 14th Amendment? Yeah, what kind of business is protected as a person? Corporations. Yep, this is where the corporate hellscape began. And now apparently they're trying to make the 14th Amendment exclude birthright citizenship, because that's a thing. I hate living in interesting times. This sucks. Okay, moving on to people. Who wrote The Wealth of Nations in 1776, which spoke of the invisible hand of the market and the idea of laissez-faire? What was his first name? Because Smith is a really easy last name. Adam Smith. The Wealth of Nations. It actually has an extremely long name, but we shortened it to The Wealth of Nations because we're American and we're easy like that. Yeah, it talks about like supply and demand and all of that. Which rich business tycoon in the Gospel of Wealth wrote that the rich should give back to the community, but in the sense of schools and libraries as opposed to charity? Yes. Which rich business tycoon wrote in the Gospel of Wealth that the rich should give back to the community, but in the sense of schools and libraries as opposed to charity? Carnegie. Not everybody was on board with this unfettered capitalism. Who was the German man who went the opposite extreme, stating that the world needed a violent socialist revolution? Karl Marx. The philosopher and revolution and prophet and whatever else that thing said. He would have an aneurysm today. All right. So, we've only got a few things left. Literary term to describe the era. So, let's see. What was the term coined by Mark Twain and Charles Dudley Warner, which described the gaudiness and shallowness of the era? The Gilded Age. Which again, it essentially refers to like gold-plated stuff where it looks valuable, but it's not. That's what gilded means. Also, which rich family built a summer home, I should say, in the mountains of Asheville, North Carolina? The Vanderbilts. All right. Two more. What was the colloquial name for the series of laws passed in the South in the 1890s in order to restrict the vote of African Americans using things such as poll taxes and a literacy test? The Jim Crow laws. And also, like, the separate but equal segregation stuff. And finally, back to the little bit of politics at the end. But the only thing I really wanted you guys to remember. People had a poor opinion of congressmen. What did one cabinet officer compare congressmen to in 1869? Yes. To use the quote from the book, I was looking for the quote and I saw quotation marks like, oh, what's this? Is it half-breeds? Like, nope. I don't know where it was. You can't use tact with a congressman. You have to get a stick and hit him on the snout. Yeah. Good stuff. Oh, Woodrow Wilson. Yeah, we'll get into that later. Yeah, so that's that for the study guide. There, of course, will be extra credit. There will be like extra information for some of the short answers, as well as, of course, extra credit at the end. So be sure and pay attention. Other than that, I'll see y'all on Monday. So, yeah, see y'all then. Yeah, what's today? Wednesday? No, today's Tuesday. What is today? Wednesday. So yeah, I'll see y'all Monday. We have school next Monday, right? Do we not? Don't fool me. Yeah. Why would it not be on Monday? Hold on. Yeah, we're here next Monday. It's Monday. Yeah, we're here Monday and Wednesday. Yeah. I was wondering why you hadn't been here. Yeah, it's Monday, Wednesday. That's okay. Well, hey. Oh. Go ahead and turn